My name's Clara. I'm nobody special. I live in a small house on the outskirts of Chicago, with an old oven and a wooden table chipped at one corner. Nobody remembers what grade I finished, what I dreamed of, or who I was before I became Daniel's mommy-only son. I'd be so happy if you stayed to hear my whole story and told me which city you're listening from. Every morning, I'm up before the sun, flipping on the dim kitchen light, pulling out flour to knead. The wicker basket sits on a chair by the window, quiet like an old friend waiting to be filled. I knead by hand, not because I can't afford a mixer, but because bread for my son, it's gotta come from my hands. Daniel's been gone 3 years. No calls, no texts, not even an angry word. Just vanished after that promise. I'm gonna make it big, Mom. I'll take care of you. I don't ask why. I'm not big on talking. Not because I've got nothing to say, but because I learned long ago that women like me, we talk too much. The bread burns, the water boils dry, and the kid misses dinner. I save my words for the layers of crust, for the pages of my journal. Day 243, rainy, miss him. This morning, I baked again, same as always. The kitchen light glows soft yellow, flour sticks to my fingertips, and in my head, I still hear Daniel at 18. Mom, I won't let you struggle anymore. I stack the loaves in the basket, cover them with a white cloth, and check the little clock stuck to the fridge. 6:30. Time to head to the farmer's market. There, I smile at regulars, even when my shirt's soaked with sweat and my hands are cracked from the cold. This morning, an old lady stopped by my stall, nibbled a piece of bread and asked, "Where's Daniel? That smart kid from way back?" I smiled, wiped my hands on my apron, and said, "He's studying in California, real busy, but doing fine." She nodded and shuffled off. I turned back to my basket, heart steady. I'm used to questions like that, just like I'm used to waiting for a text that never comes. Every night, after washing the baking trays and hanging my apron, I'd sit by Daniel's study table. Back then, we couldn't afford steady electricity. The ceiling light flickered like a bad habit, so I bought a small oil lamp. Its warm, golden glow was the kind of light I hoped my son would carry in his heart. Daniel would hunch over his books, hair a mess, left hand propping his cheek, right hand scribbling nonstop. Some nights, he'd cough but keep going. I'd sit behind him at our little table, mending clothes. Not mine his. That boy grew like a weed, outgrowing shirts every few weeks, tearing elbows from writing so much. I didn't say, "I love you," like in the movies. I don't think I knew how, but I remember one night, Daniel turned and asked, "Mom, why don't you sleep?" I answered without thinking, "Because you're not done studying." He smiled, a small, quick smile, not the flashy kind from toothpaste ads, but the one I'll never forget. That's when I knew happiness doesn't need much. As long as my son was there, under that old oil lamp, I could keep going. I heard folks say, raising a kid right takes a method. I didn't have one. I just believed that if I stuck with it, he'd see. If I lived decently, he'd learn to be decent too. Once, Daniel aced a math test. His teacher wrote, "You think beyond your years." I folded that paper and hid it in the tin where I kept the flour. Nobody knew, not even him. I still have it. I used to think if I'm gone one day and someone finds that tin, they'll know how proud I was, how sure I was that my boy would never leave me, no matter where life took him. But then he left, like so many young people do. No letters, no words. And me, I kept baking. I had a regular at the market named Gloria, Puerto Rican, there every Saturday morning. She runs a little coffee shop and always asked why I didn't hire help to take a break. I'd smile, wipe my hands on my apron. Bread for Daniel's gotta come from my hands. No one else gets how a mom's heart rises. She'd laugh her head off, but I wasn't kidding. I believe some things can't be swapped out with recipes or cash-like love. I make bread by hand, kneading until my shoulders ache, baking until I smell that slight char on the crust, just right. I don't need a mixer. I just need the memory of my son's small hands, clinging to mine during his first fever, hugging my shoulders the day he got his scholarship letter. Every loaf's my way of keeping a promise that I'm here, always here. I took on extra laundry jobs around the neighborhood. Mornings kneading dough, noon delivering bread, afternoons at the laundromat, evenings scrubbing floors, folding clothes, then baking again for the next day. Folks called me stubborn. Some said, "Clara, you're too old for this." I'd nod, but my hands never let go of that wicker basket's handle. I wove that basket when Daniel started kindergarten. First for his lunches, then for market bread. It's old now, the bamboo dulled, some strands fraying, but I won't replace it. Because I think if Daniel comes back and sees a new basket, he might not recognize his mom. Once, Ricardo Daniel's best friend handed me a few $100, said, "Daniel asked me to give this to you." I wrapped it back up, handed it over. I told him, I raised my son, not so he'd think I need him to keep me going. He laughed, called me stubborn. I said, "That's my rule. Being a mom isn't about taking from your kid. It's about giving them the best you've got so they can take it out into the world." I keep a small notebook, brown cover, creased corners, pages smelling of flour and oven smoke. It's not for bills or dreamy diaries. It's a mom's book for the days my son doesn't come home. Every morning, after the bread's done, I sit alone at the wooden table, flour still on my hands, and open it. Black ink, simple lines. Day 101, no text. Bread still baked. I don't count to blame. I count to remember. To remind myself I'm living not to wait, but to keep a fire burning for something that hasn't gone out. One rainy morning, I wrote, Day 243, rain, miss him. Small words, quiet, like steam on the oven door, faint but warm. I close the book, tuck it in the kitchen drawer with the salt and my faith. Rosa saw it once. She didn't ask, just looked at me and said, "If he ever reads that, he'll cry." I shook my head. Not for him to cry. For him to know someone remembered him with every loaf, every day. The winter market's slower. I still go. Even when it's freezing, even when I sell less, I bake. Not for money, because an empty table means an empty heart. Some days I sell just 3 loaves. An old lady buys 1. A Mexican college girl buys 2. She said, "Your bread smells like home." I smiled, "Smells like mom." I think if Daniel comes back, I won't need an apology. I just need him to smell that bread and know I'm still here. This morning was chilly. I wrapped a scarf around my neck, hugged the wicker basket, and headed to the farmer's market. It's quiet this season, but I set up at my usual spot, next to Mr. Martinez's veggie cart. Across the street, Rosa was waiting, clutching a steaming coffee, vapor curling up like smoke signals. She eyed me, then pointed at the basket. "More bread, Clara? I'm going to sprout bread wings at this rate." I laughed, setting a loaf on the green checkered cloth. "If you sprout wings, I'll call you the carb angel." Rosa cackled, the kind of laugh you get from someone who's lived through enough to keep it real. She broke off a piece, sniffed it. "This smell takes me back to my mom. She baked like this. No filling, just flour and love." I didn't say anything, just slid the basket toward her. "Eat. Love's free today." She chewed slowly, then tilted her head. "You know, Clara, the whole market calls you Bread Lady." I looked up. Bread Lady? Sounds like a fairy tale character. Nah. They say, she bakes for a kid who doesn't come back. I gripped the basket's handle. Felt like someone pressed a finger into my chest. I smiled. Soft. Better than crazy lady. Rosa went quiet for a beat. Then she patted my shoulder. "Clara, you're not crazy. You're the kind who bakes for the world, just so one person remembers the smell." I looked at the warm loaf, thought of Daniel. If he smelled this, would he stop? Or walk past like everyone else? I don't know. But I'll keep baking. Until my hands can't knead anymore. That afternoon, after packing up my stall, I walked through the small park near the church. There's an old wooden bench there, Slanted, paint peeling, but it feels good to lean back on. I sit there when it's not raining. Today, the sun was pale, golden leaves falling like confetti. Kids played in the distance, chasing each other around hydrangea bushes, giggling. I sat, opened my basket, wiped sweat with my handkerchief, and folded it neatly. On my lap, the old leather notebook. I flipped to a blank page. Day 243, dry weather. Bread still smells good. No word from him. I wrote slowly, each stroke deliberate, then set the pen down. Someone once asked, "Clara, why wait? He's your son, not your husband. He's grown, busy, he's forgotten." I just smiled. Folks think everything's give and take. You give, you get. You raise, you're owed. But being a mom, it's not like that. It's giving your whole life without signing a contract for anything back. I don't need Daniel to send money. I don't need him to take me on trips or buy fancy medicine. I just want to know somewhere out there he's living right. That he remembers a woman who did laundry all winter to buy him that advanced math book. What if he forgets? I'm still his mom. What if he disowns me? I'll still love him, from a place no one sees. I looked up at the gray clear sky, my heart light. I don't need repayment, just his happiness. That's enough. That day, I swung by the corner store before the market closed, grabbing a bunch of cilantro for tomorrow's bread wraps. Ricardo was at the counter. He saw me and flashed his usual big grin. "Clara, no bread to sell today?" I nodded, setting the cilantro on the scale. "Sold out this morning." Gave the leftovers to Rosa and the kid down the block. I paused, then pulled a thin envelope from my pocket. "Ricardo, I'm giving this back." He looked, caught off guard. "Money? What's this?" I slid the envelope toward him. "Daniel sent it. Asked you to pass it along. I'm not taking it." Ricardo shook his head, frowning. "Clara, you work yourself to death and won't take your son's money? He's making good money now. What's wrong with him helping his mom?" I just smiled. I didn't raise him so he'd think I need him to keep me afloat. Ricardo didn't get it. He flipped the envelope back and forth, like he was searching for a reason to make me keep it. I wasn't mad. I know he cares about me. But caring and understanding, they don't always go together. I spoke slowly, like I was talking to myself. My son. If he knows his mom's still getting by, still baking, still smiling with neighbors, he'll feel free to keep going. I don't want him looking back at a mom waiting for handouts. I want him to see wherever he is, I'm still standing strong. Ricardo sighed. "Clara, you're stubborn as hell." I laughed. "Stubborn's how a mom survives, Ricardo." He went quiet. I saw his eyes soften no more arguing, just respect. I grabbed my cilantro, said goodbye, and walked out. I'm not a perfect mom, but I've got rules. And one of them is, never let your kid think you're weak, waiting for them to come save you. I don't recall exactly when the kid moved in. One morning, I heard a suitcase rattling across the courtyard, and by afternoon, I saw him crouched on the steps of apartment 3, knees hugged to his torn backpack, eyes glued to the ground, like he was scared someone would spot him. His name's Max, 7 years old, skinny as a twig, quiet, never with his mom, just a tall aunt who picks him up now and then, always looking grumpy, like she's running on no sleep. I started noticing when he'd sit on the steps every afternoon, not playing, not talking. One day, I asked, "You eaten yet, kid?" He shook his head, face down. I didn't push. I just started wrapping an extra loaf in wax paper, leaving it by his door every morning. No name, no knock, just set it and go. A month went by. At first, the bread sat untouched. Then it started disappearing. One morning, while I was sweeping the yard, Max peeked out his door, holding that day's loaf. His eyes met mine, hesitant. I didn't say a word, just nodded, like it was no big deal. He took a bite, then nodded back. Small, but clear. I didn't expect anything from that kid. I wasn't trying to raise someone else's child. I just knew if a kid's never been anyone's own, At least their morning could start with a mom's bread. That afternoon, as I hung laundry, he ran over, grabbed my sleeve, and asked, "Grandma, you got more bread tomorrow?" I laughed, crouched down. "Call me Clara, kid. I'm still young." He scratched his head, giggling. I didn't correct him, not because I'm afraid of aging, but because, in his eyes, I wasn't just an old lady. I was someone who made him feel full, a little less alone. Some days, that's all it takes: a loaf, a smile, and someone who doesn't turn away. That morning, fog hung low. I just pulled a batch from the oven when I heard a shout from the alley. "Clara, open the door, you gotta see this." It was Rosa, my nosy neighbor, the one who's helped me hang laundry and called me bread lady for years. She doesn't yell like that unless it's big. I opened the door. She shoved a crumpled newspaper into my hands. Black and white, the kind where ink smudges if your hands are wet. Page 5, bottom right. Look close. I smoothed the paper. My eyes landed on a photo the size of my palm. A brightly lit room, a crowd in fancy clothes, and a young man speaking. Neat hair, dark suit, a face I'd know anywhere. Daniel. I knew it instantly, even if he's taller, thinner, dressed sharper than I ever imagined. The way he stood, shoulders slightly slumped, lips pressed, was still my boy, the one who shook reading his My Mom essay in 5th grade. The headline read, "Chief Technical Officer Daniel S., the creative mind behind Ethermind Tech." I didn't get all the words, but I understood enough. My son was somebody now, somebody newspapers wrote about, somebody with a birthday party at a hotel, not the kind with cornbread and balloons I used to throw. "See that?" Rosa nudged my shoulder. "He's made it big, but 3 years? No call. What you gonna do?" I folded the paper, set it on the wooden table. My heart pounded, but I kept my voice steady. "I'm going." "Going where?" "To that party. I need to give him this." I glanced at the wicker basket by the stove, the one I've filled with bread every day for years, even when no one ate it. I didn't say more, didn't cry, just turned to the table, quietly wiping each bamboo strand with my old handkerchief. If he won't come home, I'll go to him. If he's too big now to need me, I at least need to see him on seeing that dazzling light, to know the boy I raised still carries a hint of his mom's bread. I always figured if I saw Daniel again, I'd be tongue-tied. But that day, my hands knew what to do. The dough was kneaded slow, steady, no measuring needed. I knew exactly how long it took to rise. Daniel's favorite bread crisp crust, soft center, not too sweet, not too dry. He'd always bite the charred edges first, a kid habit he never outgrew. I sat on the wooden chair, back straight, flipping open my old handwriting notebook. My eyes aren't what they used to be, but I wrote each letter carefully. Not with a ballpoint, I used an ink pen because Daniel once said, "Mom, your writing in ink looks prettier, like in movies." I wrote, "Happy birthday, son. I still remember your smile at 5. That's it. Nothing fancy, no begging, just a small memory, hoping he'd recall. A memory enough to say, I'm still here. I let the ink dry by the window, folded the card, and tucked it inside the basket. I lined it with a white cloth, the only thing left from my wedding day, kept after selling everything else to put Daniel through school. I wiped each bamboo strand of the basket. Every scratch was a year. I remember Daniel stuffing a pebble in it, calling it superhero bread. Once, he kicked it across the yard in a tantrum. I picked it up, didn't scold, just said, "The basket's not important, but the bread inside is all love." I tied it with simple twine, soft from time, plain like me. Then I pulled out the green sweater I saved for holidays, combed my hair neat, slipped on shoes with worn soles but solid heels. I didn't know how far I'd go or if they'd let an old lady like me into a fancy place. But I knew one thing. I had to go. Because sometimes, a mom just needs to see her kid grown, even from a distance. I touched the basket's lid, whispered, "Let's go." I left for the bus stop as the sky turned gray. The cold bit through my sweater. But my hand stayed warm, gripping the basket's handle. It sat snug in my lap, like proof of every quiet love I'd carried. The bus creaked up, groaning like it didn't want to leave so early. I climbed on, nodded to the driver, a young guy in a red cap, who nodded back without a word. I took a window seat, basket steady. The glass was fogged, so I wiped a patch with my sleeve and stared out. Chicago slid by like a fast-forward movie. Streetlights still on, joggers, people dragging suitcases, a guy asleep at a stop. Everyone had somewhere to go, someone to meet. Me, I was going to see a son who might not want to see me. I didn't blame him. Success changes people. Or maybe I'd gotten too old, too plain to fit his new world. I looked at the skyscrapers in the distance. Daniel once said, "One day, Mom, you'll see me working in one of those." I thought he was kidding. Now, I didn't know if I was proud or just hollow. I wondered what I'd do if they stopped me at the door, if they laughed at my faded sweater or my beat-up basket. Then I remembered Rosa's words. If no one believes in you, your bread'll speak for you. I tightened my grip on the handle. The basket held more than bread. It held 3 years of waiting, 3 years of being a mom in silence. When the bus turned into downtown, I fixed my hair in the window's reflection. My eyes showed an older face, but the same ones that watched Daniel grow every day. I didn't bring hope. Just one thing to say, if I got the chance to see him. I'm here. The bread's still warm. The hotel loomed like something I'd never dared reach for. Glass walls gleamed. The revolving door spun silently, and a security guard in a dark suit stood like a statue. I walked closer, basket pressed to my chest. The guard glanced me up and down my green sweater, worn shoes, the wicker basket. He pursed his lips, then pointed to a side door, small and tucked away. I didn't argue. People have ways of saying you don't belong without saying it. I nodded, thanked him, and went around. The side door led to a hallway smelling of cooking oil and clanging pots. A young server saw meth in the basket, probably thinking I was delivering food. He nodded and stepped aside. I climbed a narrow staircase, legs trembling. My heart raced not from fear, but from not knowing what I was hoping for. Then I stepped into the main hall. Laughter, clinking glasses, golden chandeliers. I stood at the back, near a marble pillar, and looked toward the stage. There he was. Daniel. Tall, in a light gray suit, a shiny watch on his wrist. He was thanking people, wishing them well. I couldn't hear clearly, but I saw his smile, his eyes. He was looking at a woman beside him, white dress, loose hair, holding a wine glass. She smiled back, soft. I didn't move. Part of me wanted to leave, but another part just wanted him to see me, even once. I stepped forward through the crowd, basket tight in my hands. My heart thumped so loud I thought everyone could hear. I stopped a few feet away and called softly, "Daniel." He turned. His eyes froze on me for a second. Then, like he'd been stung, he frowned. "You've got the wrong person." I didn't answer. I smiled, opened the basket, and set the warm loaf on a nearby table. "No worries," I said, loud enough for a few heads to turn. "This bread's homemade, real good. Help yourselves." Then I turned and walked out, back straight, head high. I didn't come to be ashamed. I came to give my son a chance to remember. I left the hotel as dusk settled. Streetlights flicked on, wind slipped through my sweater, chilling my neck. But the real cold was inside. I don't know how long I walked. When my legs stopped, I was on a park bench a few blocks away. Dim lamps cast gold on wet leaves. A squirrel darted across the brick path. Car horns faded in the distance, quiet as a memory. I set the basket beside me. My hand grazed the bamboo handle, then let go. My eyes stared into nothing. He'd seen me. I wasn't so old I'd mistake my own son. But he'd brushed me off, like crumbs from a jacket. I didn't cry. That's the first thing I told myself. A mom doesn't cry not in front of her kid, not when he chooses to forget her. I adjusted the cloth over the basket. The card, the one I'd written with shaking hands, was gone. Probably fell in the banquet hall. Fine, maybe someone would find it, or maybe no one would care. That smudged purple ink wasn't the kind of fancy birthday wish they'd expect. I looked up. Clouds rolled heavy, like a thick blanket. The smell of bread lingered on my sleeve-brown sugar, toasted flour, my breath. I sat there, long enough for my feet to go numb, not waiting for anyone, just letting my heart slow down a beat. He was ashamed. I got it. Everyone lives in their own world, but no matter what, I wouldn't let my son be laughed at for having a small-town mom. I didn't come to cry. I came to set a loaf on the table like I'd done my whole youth. And today, I did it one last time, with all the dignity a mother could hold. I sat there, so long my feet started to go numb. The night wind slipped through my fingers. I pulled my old handkerchief from my pocket, wiped my cheek not for tears, but for dust from the breeze. I'd kept my promise. No crying. I'd sworn to myself after Daniel left that I'd never be a clinging mom. I didn't call, didn't write, didn't bother him. But I baked bread every morning, placed it in the basket, and quietly wrote in my journal, Day 109, getting cold, miss him. Or, Day 243, drizzle, basket still in its spot. I thought, if I just stayed patient, one day he'd understand that the bread wasn't just food, but a message. I'm still here. I still love you like always. But today, I learned something else. Love, if it's not received, needs to be let go with dignity. No one wants to be a stranger to their own child. But if I had to choose between love and self-respect, I'd pick the latter. So when I look in the mirror, I still see a real mom. I remembered a time when Daniel was 6, teased at school for wearing a frayed collar shirt. He came home crying, buried in my arms. I held him, wiped his tears, and said, You don't need to look like anyone else. Just know you live right. I taught him that, and now I had to live it. A decent person doesn't scream when rejected, doesn't crumble when forgotten. A decent person quietly stands, brushes off their coat, and keeps walking because there's still bread to bake, sleep to guard, and a heart to heal. I stood up, lifted the basket. My hands shook a little but held firm. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but I knew tonight I'd kept my promise. I went to see my son, and I left with my heart intact. I wasn't there to see what happened after I left that room. I don't know if anyone touched the wicker basket or if the bread was tossed out like a misfit gift in a fancy party. But later, I heard, a young woman stood by the table long after I was gone. She wore that white dress, chandelier light glinting off her wine glass, still smudged with lipstick. She didn't eat, didn't chat. Her eyes followed the spot where I'd walked away like something unnamed was tugging at her to stay. As the party wound down, a server bent to pick up the card that fell under the table. He was about to toss it with the empty glasses, but she, Isabella, I learned her name later, held out her hand. She read it slowly, eyes locked on each word. Happy birthday, son. I still remember your smile at 5. That's all. No name, no photo, no fancy border. Just ink smudged on plain paper. But maybe that's why it hit her, reach the deepest parts of a woman, learning to stay calm when things break. They say she didn't cry, but everyone noticed her eyes redden. People kept talking contracts, tech, partnerships, but no one dared approach her then. Except a young server who'd seen it all, my rejection, her picking up the paper. He said, she asked, barely above a whisper, Who wrote this? He glanced at the oven corner where I'd stood, then said, An older lady. Said she was Daniel's mom, but they sent her away. Isabella went quiet. For a long time. They say her eyes changed, not the cool, confident look she'd worn walking into the party. More like mine, on a far-off morning, when I placed the first loaf in the basket, waiting for my son to come home. Narration: Clara, first person. I wasn't there, but I can picture her face, the woman in the white dress, standing by my old wicker basket, clutching a crumpled card like it held someone else's childhood. They say Isabella didn't speak for the rest of the party. She sat at a corner table, staring at the space I'd left, her hand tight around the card until the edges creased. I don't know her, never heard her name before, but I bet some small part of her, however, craved a homemade loaf or a birthday wish scrawled in shaky ink. They say she went straight to her office after the party, didn't say goodbye to anyone, didn't linger. She opened her laptop, started an email, then deleted it. Her eyes stayed red. Not from the wine. Maybe she thought of Daniel. Maybe she started to understand why a poor mom would cross half the city just to bring a small loaf to a party no one invited her to. I don't know what she thought. But if she loved Daniel, she must have heard him talk about me. And if he talked, even once there was something for her to hold on to. Maybe she remembered I did laundry, sold bread, that I sold my wedding ring to buy him a new backpack. She might not have believed it when she heard it, but seeing that card letters I practiced for 3 weeks, her heart softened. They say, respect doesn't come from titles or money. It comes from a quiet act that asks for nothing back. I've got nothing to brag about. But if she sat there that long, if she held that card until the room's lights dimmed, I believe something in her changed. I wasn't at the coffee shop that afternoon, but Ricardo told me later, Clara, I've never seen her like that. Isabella showed up on a Tuesday. No heads up, no makeup, no sparkling white dress like at the party, just jeans, a cream cardigan, and the same leather bag. Ricardo knew her the second she pushed the door open. You're Daniel's friend, right? She asked. Her voice was soft but direct. Ricardo nodded. She didn't beat around the bush. That woman at the party, was she really Daniel's mom? Ricardo said he looked at her a moment, then nodded slowly, like he was agreeing with himself. She didn't say more, just pulled up a chair. Ricardo told her everything. About me. How I sent back the money Daniel mailed, saying, I raised him to grow, not to think I'm weak. How I left bread at the door of a neighbor kid abandoned for a year, no one the wiser. How I mended shirts, washed linens, stood all day at the farmer's market to keep a promise made in a hug 3 years ago. Ricardo said Isabella didn't hide her feelings. She leaned forward at times, bowed her head at others, her hand rubbing her neck like she was swallowing something stuck. When he finished, she pulled a white envelope from her bag. Inside, just a dried flower petal. No words, no address. Just a thank you and silence. Ricardo asked, You're doing this for Daniel? Isabella shook her head. Number for her. Because if I had a mom like that, I wouldn't have let her walk away alone. I heard Ricardo's story and didn't say a word, just breathed out slow. Some things don't need defending. They just need to be seen. I didn't know why the nurses looked at me differently that morning. They moved softer, quieter, like they were guarding something bigger than my heart condition. At noon, the doctor came for rounds. He checked his chart, then said, casual as if talking about the weather, Your treatment costs for this month are covered, Clara. I froze. Who paid? He shrugged. Don't know. Cash, left at the front desk early. No name, no note. I lay still, didn't ask again, just ran my fingers along the bedsheet's edge. Something in me wasn't surprised, but grateful, mixed with a touch of caution. I'd received plenty kindness from neighbors, glances from passers-by, spare change from regulars when they saw my hands shake wrapping bread. But this was different. I felt respect, not pity, not charity. I thought of Isabella's eyes in that newspaper, photo gentle but firm. She wasn't the type to fall for sappy stories, but once moved, she'd act, no half measures. I guessed it was her, no proof. But I knew some things don't need proof, just a quiet nod from your heart. I didn't need her to explain, didn't want Daniel to know, didn't need to say thanks. Sometimes people help each other just to keep this world a little right. That afternoon, I wrote in my journal, Day 954, someone understands, Mom. And I thought, just like I baked bread for 3 years, believing my son would come back, someone out there did something for me, believing a mom deserved to be remembered. The next day, Rosa came back from the bakery with a white envelope. She didn't hand it to me right away, just set it gently on the wooden table between the water pitcher and fruit basket, and said, Ricardo sent this. Didn't say much, but you should open it. I nodded, waited till she left the room, then opened it. Inside was a plain white card, no words, no signature. Just a dried purple petal, pressed carefully thin as a memory, fragrant as a quiet moment tucked in an old box. I stared at it a long time. Didn't know why it calmed me. Maybe because it didn't need words. When someone gives you something nameless, its presence is the message. That petal wasn't expensive, but someone took the time to choose it, keep it, press it, send it. A small act, but enough to tell me my heart wasn't alone in this world. I slipped it into my journal. Didn't tape it, didn't pin it, just tucked it between the pages where I'd written, Day 243, Rain, miss him. Ricardo texted later. One line. She didn't say much, just, thank Clara for raising Daniel. I read it over and over. Simple, no fluff, but it said everything. I didn't know how many shadows or doubts filled Isabella's life, how much hustle she carried, but I believed that woman knew what mattered. Not titles, not flashy gifts, but the way a mom lived with her hands, her heart and bread no one saw, but never went cold. I didn't text back, just added a line to my journal. Day 955, the petal still smells. I've lived through over 50 Chicago winters, and I've learned some things don't need asking, but they still need seeing clearly. When the doctor said my hospital stay, meds, and heart monitoring were paid for, I didn't ask who first. I asked, since when? They said, about a week ago, someone came in person, paid cash. I nodded, not acting too shocked, but inside, an old scratch was gently smoothed over. I leaned toward Rosa. You still got those eagle eyes from spotting rats at the market? She smirked. Who you calling old? Spill it, what do you need? I winked. I want to know who's coming here. If you see a young woman, long dress, no name, tell me. Rosa raised an eyebrow. Who's she? I shook my head. Someone who values an old lady with nothing but an oven. That afternoon, I roped in Mary Ammy's sister. She showed up at the hospital with a bag of food, but really to stand in the hallway, pretending to scroll her phone while watching everyone coming and going. I peeked through the room's glass door, saw her straighten when a white figure walked in. Maria didn't need glasses to spot a deal at the grocery store, and she didn't now. She nodded slightly, typed something on her phone. She's here. I closed my eyes. Didn't ask more. I didn't need a name. Just needed to know. Someone, besides Daniel, thought of a bread-selling mom with no email, no Instagram, just a heart that wouldn't quit. That night, I wrote slow and steady. Day 956. Someone still quietly grateful. I don't nap much. Old folks like me don't need as many naps. Just a few calm breaths, a few quiet minutes. When the hospital room door clicked softly, I opened my eyes but didn't turn. I knew, if it was a doctor, they'd knock hard. If a nurse, they'd push the door with their back, hands full of charts or a blood pressure cuff. But these footsteps, light, steady, like they didn't want to disturb. Only one person walked like that, someone who'd come 3 times in a week, always silent, never leaving a name. Maria stood in the hallway outside, peering through the glass. I saw her nudge her glasses up, then jot something on her phone. After the white figure passed, she came in, closed the door, didn't speak right away. I looked at her. She looked at me. We're 2 women who grew up on flour and market spare change. We don't need many words to understand each other. She's about 30, long hair, white dress, tall, alone, carried a leather wallet, looked classy but not stuck up. I nodded slightly. What'd she ask? Maria pulled a folded paper from her pocket. She asked the doctor about your heart condition. Didn't give a name. Asked gently, like she's known you forever but didn't want to show it. I opened the paper. No words. Just a small pressed petal, the kind Daniel used to bring home from the park as a kid hen as a memory, fragrant as a piece of peace kept in an old box. I said softly, almost to myself, sometimes kindness doesn't need a name, just deep enough to feel it. Maria put a hand on my shoulder. Who do you think it is? I didn't answer, just turned to the glass. Outside, branches swayed gently, and I thought, if it's her, then Daniel still has a shot. I never expected the phone to ring for me. That old clunker on the corner table was mostly for market orders, doctor calls, or quick check-ins from Rosa or Maria. I'm used to silence, so used that noise makes me wary. But that noon, when the phone rang not loud, not rushed, I knew this was different. I let Rosa answer, my hand hooked to an IV. She listened, then hit speaker. A little girl's voice came through clear, bright, trembling with excitement. Grammy Clara, can you hear me? I laughed, weak but real. I hear you, Mia. She let out a big sigh over the phone. Then her voice turned serious, the kind of serious only kids can pull off. Grammy, I called Uncle Daniel today. I told him, Uncle, I love you. I love Mom. I love Grammy. Mom and I are coming to the hospital to see Grammy. Be there with her, okay? I froze. My heart skipped a beat. And he went real quiet for a long time. Then he said, I haven't been good, Mia. Her voice softened. He sounded so sad, but I think he'll come. I closed my eyes. No tears fell, but my throat warmed. Sometimes, an 8-year-old sees what grown-ups refuse to. Mia went on, Grammy, don't be sad anymore, okay? I know he doesn't hate you. He's just embarrassed for forgetting. I didn't know what to say. I just rested my hand on the IV tube, patting it like I was patting my own forehead. I said softly, Thank you, Mia. You're smarter and braver than a lot of grown-ups. She giggled over the phone. Have you eaten porridge yet? I told Mom to make oatmeal porridge for you. Eat it and smile, okay? I nodded, like she was right at my bedside. When the call ended, Rosa turned to me. That kid might just be the only bridge between you two. I didn't answer. I just thought, if Daniel really heard Mia's voice today, maybe his heart's starting to find its way back. I was propped up on pillows, sunlight flickering through the hospital room's window. The sky that day was oddly clear. Not a cloud in sight like the heavens wanted to give me a gentle afternoon. Rosa pushed the door open, holding a small thermal container, chattering like a sparrow. Clara, you don't eat. Your bread's gonna taste like dishwater. I squinted. I'm just recovering from a heart thing, and you're trying to kill me with that mouth? Rosa cackled, set the container on the table, and opened it. Steam rose smells of fried onions, shredded chicken, so good I wanted to swallow tears instead of saliva. But I fake glared. This porridge, you buy it or make it? Of course I bought it. Rosa put her hands on her hips. If I cooked, you'd be done for. I laughed a thin, real laugh, the kind that'd make a passerby think I'd just gotten good news. Rosa sat on the bed's edge, handing me a spoonful of porridge. Come on, open up, you proud old bat. I nodded. Just for the porridge, not for you. We went quiet for a few minutes. I ate. She talked about the Markethau. Carlos burned his bread again. How Maritza wore a gold necklace to the stalls, making everyone think she hit the jackpot. Mid-bite, Rosa tilted her head, voice casual. You know, Clara, you're a damn superhero. Sick in bed and still worrying about your basket molding at home. I gave a faint smile. I'm not scared of moldy bread. I'm scared my heart'll go cold. She froze, then nodded, like she understood something only moms who've waited for their kids would get. Come on, girl. Rosa grabbed my hand. If Daniel doesn't come back, I'll make him eat all those burnt batches you made when you were learning to bake for him. I shook my head, laughed again. Right then, I knew Vin if my son was still lost. I had a friend beside me, loud, sassy, and loving me in a way that never needed fancy words. I sat back, a towel draped over my lap. Sunlight spilled across the hospital floor like an old worn ribbon. Daniel was by my bed, face scrunched, holding a metal bowl like it was some alien tool. You sure I gotta mix the dough clockwise, Mom? he asked, forehead wrinkled like dried orange peel. I nodded, pointing at his hands. Not too fast. Dough needs convincing, not forcing. He paused, looked at me, and chuckled. You talking about dough or people? I smirked. Baking's about understanding people. Everyone needs time to soften. I told him to stop. I took a small spoon, pressed the dough. It was still lumpy. Daniel sighed, shaking his sore wrist. I didn't think baking was this hard. And yet, I did it for 20 years, I said, not bitter, just a gentle nudge like a breeze. Every morning, my hands knew how much water, how much patience it took. Daniel looked down. I didn't ask more. I could see he was still scared in the way he dodged my eyes. He carefully set the bowl on the table, wiped his hands, then turned back, hesitant. Mom, I'm sorry. I looked at him. Didn't blink. Didn't speak right away. I let that apology hit the air, soak into the bedsheets, like yeast sinking into dough. Finally, I said, I know you're not cruel, just scared. People fear failure, judgment, not being enough. I've been scared too. Daniel looked up, eyes red. I took his hand, squeezed lightly. Everyone's got a piece of dough in their heart that hasn't risen. The trick is, don't throw it out. Let it rest. Be patient. He nodded, lips tight. I saw a speck of flour on his sleeve. I almost reached to brush it off, then stopped. He's got to learn to clean it himself. That morning, the air turned chilly. The small heater in the hospital room hummed steadily, but I saw Daniel's shoulders shiver as he pulled a chair close to my bed. He held a piece of paper, folded in quarters, then unfolded it. He kept doing that until I spoke up. If you've got something to say, spit it out. I don't like bread baked twice. He looked up, eyes heavy with exhaustion. The company, it's in trouble. I nodded slightly, like I'd guessed it long ago. Tell me. They want me out. Said if I stay, the company won't get a big investment. He paused, licked his lips, eyes darting away. A major shareholder's got an old grudge against me. They spread lies and people bought it. I sat still. My hand stayed on the blanket, unmoving. How do you feel? Daniel gave a bitter laugh, like chuckling at a wound that hadn't healed. I'm pissed, but I'm more tired. 4 years. I built it from a garage idea. Now I'm stepping back like a loser. I looked at my sawn messy hair, wrinkled shirt, dark circles under his eyes. No trace of the hotshot CTO from the papers. I didn't see the kid who promised to change our lives anymore. I saw a man, hit hard by life's backswing for the first time. I exhaled slowly. You know who you're like? He shook his head. Me. Way back, they fired me from the laundromat just for refusing night shifts. I came home, baked bread, sold it at the morning market. My hands cracked. My feet stood 7 hours straight. But I didn't break. Daniel looked down. His voice rasped, I'm not as strong as you. I shook my head. It's not about stronger, just different timing. I didn't have a company to lose. I just had bread to bake. He laughed a low, muffled sound, like a fire going out. I reached out, touched his arm lightly. Sometimes getting knocked down is your chance to kneel in the right place, and from there, stand up again. Daniel went quiet for a long time. Then, soft as a prayer, he said, I don't know where to start over. I answered, from the old shoes under my bed and the wicker basket. It's always waiting. That afternoon, Daniel came back to the hospital late. He carried a paper bag, but his eyes were empty. I looked up at him, didn't ask. Some things don't need questions, just sitting there quietly is enough. After a while, he spoke. Voice curt, like a rope stretched tight all day. Isabella came to the bakery. I sat up straighter. She didn't blame me. Just looked at the basket and asked, Did you ever tell your mom the truth? I closed my eyes. Not from pain, but because I knew the storm had finally hit. Daniel slumped onto the bed's edge, shoulders sagging. I told her the truth. I said I was ashamed. Not because you're poor. Because of me, because I let my past make me scared to introduce you to anyone. I opened my eyes slow. And what'd she say? She said, she can't love someone who denied their own mom. Not because of who you are, but because I chose silence. Daniel laughed, a sound like crumpled paper. She said, the company needs her, not me. I didn't sigh, didn't wipe his tears. I just placed my hand on his cold one, squeezed lightly. Losing both doesn't mean you've got nothing to start with. He looked at me, eyes red. You're not mad at me? I tilted my head, met his gaze. What's mad gonna do? Make you give up for good? Daniel nodded, like a kid learning self-respect doesn't come with punishment. I went on, voice softer. You just learned something no school teaches. That some people walk away not because they hate you, but because they want you to learn to look back. Daniel stayed quiet a long time, then pulled a handkerchief from his pocket. Not his, mine. White, green trim, embroidered with a C. I smiled, first time that day. He said, I kept this while you were sleeping. I don't want to forget this feeling. You sitting here, still loving me. I closed my eyes, letting the chest pain fade back. I love you, even when you're wrong, especially when you're wrong. I woke up in the middle of the night, not from nurses or chest pain, but from a sound-soft, shaky breathing, like a lost kid by his mom's bed. I opened my eyes, faint light from the wall lamp spilling across his face. Daniel sat there, hands clutching mine, head bowed. I didn't speak, just let the warmth from his hands flow to me, slow and sure. Mom, he whispered like he was scared someone would hear. I whispered back, I know. No need for more words. Some cracks don't need patching, just touching hands keeps them from breaking more. Daniel gave a small laugh, tears falling onto the bedsheet. I'm sorry for letting it get this bad before coming back. I brushed the back of his hand, his skin drier than I remembered. I thought of the 3 years he lived in bright lights, with no one close enough to wipe his tears. You're not cruel, I said, no trace of blame. Just scared, and I get that fear. He nodded, like someone caught but knowing they're forgiven. Daniel stayed by me until morning. Didn't sleep, didn't step away. When the nurse came to change my bandage, he stood up before her, clumsy hands, but determined. I'll do it, he said. The nurse looked at me. I nodded. I watched, my heart light as a foggy morning. My son, who once thought fame could replace love, was relearning the small things, wiping my forehead with a warm cloth, jotting the doctor's orders on a crumpled paper. By noon, he set a small cloth bag on the table. I opened it. My old canvas shoes, the handkerchief I embroidered when he was in 2nd grade, and the wicker basket. I touched the bamboo strands, the smell of dry bamboo, familiar and worn, like a sigh wrapped up. Daniel looked at me, eyes unguarded. I want to learn to bake again with you, from scratch. I smiled, not from joy, but from knowing at last the oven in me never went out. I never thought I'd see my son stand by my hospital bed, eyes never leaving me, but that's what I saw for 2 days straight. Daniel didn't ask if I was tired, didn't clown around to cheer me up. He just worked small tasks with a seriousness I'd never seen before. He learned to open porridge containers without spilling, learned to fold washcloths to fit the tiny bedside drawer, learned to ask nurses at the right moment without ticking them off. This morning, I pretended to sleep, curious what he'd do when he thought I wasn't awake. I heard his rubber slippers shuffle slowly from the hallway. A sigh. Then, a chair dragged softly, and a whisper. You did everything for me, Mom. Now it's my turn to learn how to be human. I stayed still, tears sliding sideways onto the pillow, but my heart was calm. Not quite forgiveness, but a feeling. I wasn't alone in this journey anymore. When I opened my eyes, he was folding my old sweater, the one with frayed shoulders. Rosa sent more porridge, he said, not looking at me. Cold yet? Hot. I warmed it in the nurse's microwave. He helped me sit up, hands careful. I ate, silent. No more accusations or explanations between us. Just the spoon, his hand, and quiet eyes that didn't shy away. After, he sat jotting down the doctor's orders, med times, light exercises, what to monitor. Each line was neat, like a high school love letter. I said, "You don't have to do it all yourself." He looked up. "I want to, Mom. Not to make up for anything. To learn how to be there for someone I forgot." I exhaled. Not long, not light. Just enough for a small spark to bloom in my heart. Not because Daniel had changed, but because he was walking the right path on his own 2 feet. I glanced at the wicker basket on the table. Never had it looked so new. After nearly 3 weeks in the hospital, the doctor cleared me to go home. Daniel picked me up in the old car he used to call junk, like a desk job life. But today, it was washed clean, seats covered with a fresh towel, like he was picking up someone important. When we turned into our narrow alley, I went quiet. The old house sat their same slanted tile roof, wooden door speckled with paint, but spotless, windows flung wide. A whiff of lemon and lemongrass floated in the breeze. I stepped inside. The kitchen-meal battleground was tidy. The wooden table was scrubbed, gleaming like the day we bought it, and the oven set back in its corner. Seeing it, I could almost hear the crackle of firewood from those foggy winter mornings. Daniel lingered behind me, hesitant. "You still remember how to fire up the oven, Mom?" I didn't turn. "You asking to remind me or to learn?" He laughed. A real laugh. That afternoon, while Daniel was out wiping down trays in the yard, I went to my bedroom, opened the wardrobe, pulled out an old white blouse-day one I kept for days I needed to feel pretty. I ironed the collar, smoothed the sleeves, found a light brown scarf I'd bought at a flea market last year but never worn. I looked in the mirror. My hair's grayer, but my eyes haven't changed. I didn't put on makeup. Just wanted Daniel to see his mom, really his mom, but also a woman who knows her worth. Stepping out, I saw Daniel in the yard, towel in hand, sweat beading on his forehead. He turned, froze for a second. "Mom," he said softly, "you look nice today." I shrugged. Gotta have someone pretty to greet customers. A bakery's not just an oven and flour. My first morning back in the kitchen after a month, I didn't need dough. I stood behind a chair, arms crossed, watching Daniel fumble with measuring flour, sifting, mixing yeast like a college kid in a chem lab. "Don't dump all the water at once," I said lightly. "Dough's like people needs time to soak it in." He looked up, flour speckling his forehead, and grinned sheepishly. "You sound like a philosopher, Mom." I pursed my lips. Not a philosopher, just an old lady who knows how dough crumbles if you rush it. He kept going, wiping sweat with the back of his hand, flour smearing his face like a kid's finger painting. I let him figure it out. A while later, when the bread smell spread, I caught a whiff of char, definitely burnt. I didn't say anything. He opened the oven, pulled out a tray of black, cracked loaves, hard as rocks. We locked eyes. I said, calm as ever, "Looks just like my first batch. Burnt, hard, and worth keeping as a memory." He let out a breath, then laughed. A laugh that admitted defeat but wasn't ashamed. The door swung open. Mia burst in, pigtails bouncing, wearing a pink cat t-shirt. She sniffed the air, wrinkled her nose. "Uncle Daniel, what's with the charcoal bread?" she yelped, voice all sass. Daniel held out the tray. "Try it, kid. It's bold flavor." Mia pinched a piece, chewed, then faked a dramatic gag, flopping onto the table. "I'm never ever loving someone who bakes like this," she groaned. I cracked up. Daniel played along, scratching his head. "I'm just starting out. Give me 30 more tries." Mia raised an eyebrow. 30? I'm grabbing a chair and camping out. I wiped my hands, poured her a glass of milk. "Drink this. Washes down that brave bread taste." The 3 of us sat in the kitchen. Small room, big laughs. I looked at my son, my granddaughter, and thought, if anyone asked what kept me going, this is it. Not the bread, the people who share it. I was wiping down the wooden table when I saw a woman on the porch, phone in hand, face tight like she'd just swallowed a meeting gone south. She wore an office skirt but a slightly wrinkled blouse, hair falling past her forehead. I knew the type, someone with a title, but trouble on their plate. I opened the door. "Come in, hon. It's cooler inside." She stepped in, eyes flicking over the bread display, then landing on me. Can I just sit a bit? Hope it's no bother." I shook my head, grabbed the teapot. Bread's fresh, tea's hot. If life's got you fried, step right in. She gave a small laugh, voice quiet. "I'm Sophie, Prite manager at a travel agency nearby. My team just went rogue. Not one person, the whole department." I nodded, pouring her a cup of tea. "I'm old, but I've managed one kid. Stubborn, silent, thought no one got him." Sophie looked surprised. I shrugged. "My son, he's back there at the oven now." She glanced at Daniel, mixing dough behind the counter, apron streaked with flour but face calm. "How'd you deal with it?" Sophie asked. I smiled, slid a loaf toward her. "Baking takes flour, water, yeast, and time. People are the same. Not everyone rises at once." She went quiet, then exhaled. "I'm impatient. I want them to get me right away, but I never asked what they need." I poured more tea. Ask, then listen. Listen, then wait. Wait, then talk. Sophie stayed a while. When she stood, she dipped her head. "Thanks, ma'am. I think I'll go back and ask before I start ordering." I grinned. "Come back for more bread when you nail it. Pre-order a batch of peace loaves." She laughed, really laughed, for the first time, then left, shoulders looser as she stepped out. I watched her go. Half a loaf sat on the table. I didn't clear it. Left it there like a reminder that kind words need a place to stay. The next day, Sophie came back. I just lit the oven when I heard the doors jingle. Daniel was still stacking flour bags on the shelf. Sophie walked in, face brighter, hair neatly pinned. She looked like someone who'd sorted out her thoughts. "Here for bread?" I asked, holding a poker to turn the first loaf in the oven. And to see Daniel. Daniel spun around, startled to see her. I pretended to focus on the fire, staying out of it, but my ears stayed open, like any mom's. "Hey," Sophie said, voice steadier than yesterday. "I've got a proposition." Daniel tugged off his apron, stepped closer. "Yeah?" "We need an internal tour coordinator. Light work, but it takes someone who gets organization, has patience with people, and knows how to pay attention." Sophie smiled, looking right at him. I saw Daniel hesitate. He glanced at me. I didn't look back, just turned the bread. "What's she want me to do, Mom?" he asked when Sophie stepped out to wait on the porch. I answered cool as ever. "She's asking you to be human again from the ground up." Daniel blinked, caught off guard. I set the tray on the wooden table, draped a white cloth over it. "You know what I used to think?" "What?" "That some kids, like dough with bad yeast, need to bake slower than others. But as long as there's heat, they can still rise." Daniel didn't speak. He turned to the wicker basket hanging under the eaves where his mom used to tuck dreams every morning, even when no one ate them. I knew he remembered. Finally, he nodded. "I'll give it a shot." I didn't smile, just nodded back, then patted his shoulder. My hand was rough, but warm. Warmer than the oven because it had held a kid steady through life's cold seasons. He walked out. Sophie stood there, sunlight glowing behind them, casting a long streak across the brick yard. I watched through the window, silent, poured myself a cup of tea, then sat in my old wooden chair. Being human is like baking. No rush, no hurry. Just remember there's always fire in the kitchen and someone, still sitting here, waiting for a batch to rise. We picked a Saturday morning. Daniel carefully wiped every window pane. I laid out loaves on wooden trays, covering them with a cream-colored linen cloth I'd hand-stitched years ago. The shop's sign hung out front, carved wood, Pan de Mama. Below it, my wicker basket swayed in the breeze, like an old hello to anyone who'd ever left home. I didn't expect much. Opening the shop now was like replanting a wilted tree. But Daniel believed. And he believed with his eyes, not just words. Customers trickled in. Some came out of curiosity. Others stopped, caught by the warm bread smell wafting past. An old lady walked in, leaning on a cane. She sniffed, then said, "This place smells like my mom's kitchen way back when." I didn't ask more, just handed her a small loaf wrapped in brown paper. She held it with both hands, like cradling a memory. Daniel wrote little notes by hand, tucking them into each bread bag. "If you've got a mom, call her today. Mom's bread isn't just for eating." Mia was the most excited. She darted around the shop, sticking notes, counting loaves, then shouted, "Uncle, 3 people bought already." I watched her grin, my heart light as fresh dough. A middle-aged woman came in, office blouse, hair in a high bun, probably just off work. She bought 2 loaves, hesitated, then asked, "Is this the bread from that mom who baked for her son?" I froze. Daniel stepped up, smiling. "Yes, ma'am. My mom's bread. And now I'm learning to bake it just like her." The woman went quiet, nodded, and left. I didn't know what she'd heard, but her eyes when she looked at me warm, like the kitchen lamp from years ago. We closed when the sun dipped low. A few loaves were left, but no one felt down. Daniel scooped Mia into his arms. I tidied the kitchen. Every small task felt meaningful, like life was rising again in our hands. As I turned off the lights, I looked at the wicker basket on the porch. It swayed gently, like it had never been forgotten. We picked a Saturday morning. Daniel carefully wiped every window pane. I laid out loaves on wooden trays, covering them with a cream-colored linen cloth I'd hand-stitched years ago. The shop sign hung out front, carved wood, Pan de Mama. Below it, my wicker basket swayed in the breeze, like an old hello to anyone who'd ever left home. I didn't expect much. Opening the shop now was like replanting a wilted tree. But Daniel believed, and he believed with his eyes, not just words. Customers trickled in. Some came out of curiosity. Others stopped, caught by the warm bread smell wafting past. An old lady walked in, leaning on a cane. She sniffed, then said, "This place smells like my mom's kitchen way back when." I didn't ask more, just handed her a small loaf wrapped in brown paper. She held it with both hands, like cradling a memory. Daniel wrote little notes by hand, tucking them into each bread bag. "If you've got a mom, call her today. Mom's bread isn't just for eating." Mia was the most excited. She darted around the shop, sticking notes, counting loaves, then shouted, "Uncle, 3 people bought already." I watched her grin, my heart light as fresh dough. A middle-aged woman came in, office blouse, hair in a high bun, probably just off work. She bought 2 loaves, hesitated, then asked, "Is this the bread from that mom who baked for her son?" I froze. Daniel stepped up, smiling. "Yes, ma'am. My mom's bread. And now I'm learning to bake it just like her." The woman went quiet, nodded, and left. I didn't know what she'd heard, but her eyes when she looked at me warm, like the kitchen lamp from years ago. We closed when the sun dipped low. A few loaves were left, but no one felt down. Daniel scooped Mia into his arms. I tidied the kitchen. Every small task felt meaningful, like life was rising again in our hands. As I turned off the lights, I looked at the wicker basket on the porch. It swayed gently, like it had never been forgotten. That night, our house glowed with light. Daniel set the table. Mia picked a bread-patterned tablecloth she insisted on because Grammy's the best chef in the world. I just laughed, pouring water into a glass pitcher. Everyone pitched in. One gave orders. No one lagged behind. It had been a while since this kitchen felt alive again. Sophie arrived with a salad and a bottle of light red wine. She was polite, measured in her words, and looked at Daniel like she believed he still had something good to give. I ladled soup, set bread on a wooden tray, and sat down. No one said it, but everyone waited for me to start. I picked up my spoon, nodded slightly. Eat up before it gets cold. Amid the soft clink of spoons on bowls, Mia piped up. Grammy, was Uncle Daniel naughty when he was little? I glanced at Daniel, who rubbed his neck, sheepish. I took a sip of water, then started. When he was small, he messed with fire once. Lit a piece of paper. Didn't notice the basket of dough I'd just proofed nearby. Basket caught fire. No bread baked. Smoke filled the whole kitchen. Mia's eyes went wide. Sophie chuckled softly. Daniel grimaced. Keep going, Mom, and I'm out of here. I went on, slow. But instead of yelling, I handed him a broom, made him clean up. That night, I still baked. Not because I forgave him, because I believed that boy needed to learn how to fix things, not run from them. The room went quiet for a beat. Then Sophie said, light as air, maybe that's why he's not running anymore. I didn't add anything, just watched my son, head down, ladling more soup for his niece. In that kitchen, there were no grand apologies, but every glance, every small gesture, was the answer I'd waited years for. I didn't notice when Daniel and Sophie started sitting so close. After dinner, I cleared dishes quietly in the kitchen, leaving the living room to them. I didn't catch every word, but heard enough to know it wasn't about work or the polite small talk from their first meeting. Daniel shared a college dream that if he hadn't gone into tech, he'd have been a tour guide, taking poor kids across America to see real snow-capped mountains, not just on screens. I paused, hands still, when I heard that. I remembered when he was 8. I pointed at an old map on the wall. That's the Grand Canyon. He asked, You been there, Mom? I went quiet. He didn't ask again. But years later, he kept that map, folded neat, like a secret. Sophie said she'd wanted to study art, but her parents' divorce pushed her into a safe major. I heard her laugh softly. I still draw, but just on napkins when I'm bored. Daniel said, If you want, this bakery's got plenty of napkins. They both laughed. I didn't butt in, just poured another cup of tea, then stepped out to the back porch. A soft breeze blew, the wicker basket swaying by the doorframe. I touched it lightly to make sure this wasn't just a sweet dream. Daniel had forgotten he could be gentle. Now he was learning again, bit by bit. I went back, sat in my wooden chair near the door, watched my son tell stories, eyes shining, watched Sophie nod, listening like she believed in something beyond the present. I didn't rush to name their connection, but I knew, from that moment, Daniel wouldn't be as alone as before. That afternoon, sunlight slanted gently across the Pan de Mama porch. I just wiped down the wooden counter, heard the door's bell jingle softly. No one called out. Just a breeze, carrying a faint whiff of perfume I didn't know. I stepped to the front. Daniel stood frozen, still holding the rag he was using to clean the glass. Across from him was a woman, long hair, cream coat, a basket in her hands. I didn't need to ask. I knew it was her. Isabella. She stood still, like she'd thought long and hard before coming. Her eyes held no blame, no pleading, just a quiet, like an unfinished diary page. Daniel didn't speak. He just nodded slow, not looking away. I didn't hear them exchange a word, but somehow I understood better than anyone. Some things don't need saying when they're real. A single look can close a chapter. Isabella dipped her head slightly. She turned, walked away, steps slow but steady. I saw Daniel's hand tighten on the rag, but his shoulders relaxed, freer than any time in the past 3 years. I didn't go greet her. I stayed behind the glass door, hand on the still warm counter, and I knew another door had closed gently, without a sound, but it opened a new breath for my son. No tears, no music, just sunlight, and someone he once loved now choosing to move on. I turned back, lit the oven. The next batch was almost ready, its familiar smell filling every corner. The wicker basket hung on the porch, swaying faintly. And I thought, forgiveness doesn't need words, just enough quiet to know you've let go. This morning was chilly. I brewed a pot of hot cocoa, about to hand it to Daniel, when I heard a soft knock 3 taps, then silence. An old lady stepped in, gray wool coat, neck wrapped in a frayed knit scarf, leaning on a cane. She didn't speak right away. Just stood in the middle of the shop, closed her eyes, inhaled deeply, then exhaled slow. This place, she opened her eyes, voice raspy but clear, smells like memory. I paused, not because her words were strange, but because they were so true my heart trembled. Daniel stepped over, invited her to sit. I cleared a spot by the window, where morning sun usually pools. She didn't look at us, just fumbled in her coat pocket. Pulled out a neatly folded handkerchief. Mama embroidered on the edge. She said, "When I was a girl, my mom baked sourdough. Nothing fancy, just flour, salt, water. But every time I got to our alley, that smell told me I was waited for." I sat beside her, didn't interrupt. "I thought I'd forgotten," she went on. "But this morning, passing by, I stopped. Because this bread, it's the same. That smell doesn't fade." I glanced at Daniel. He didn't speak, but his eyes lit up not with pride, but with knowing what he was doing mattered. Right then, Mia ran out from the back, clutching a stack of paper bread bags. She saw the lady beamed. "Ma'am, my Grammy's bread is the best in the world." The lady laughed, a sound light as silver bells, blending with the smell of fresh-baked loaves. I looked at her, then at Mia, one old, one young, 2 ends of a timeline, and Maine the middle holding that fragile thread. No one ordered, no one asked the price, but I wrapped her a loaf with a charred crust, the kind Daniel used to love. I said, "This is for you. Every memory you keep is a treasure." Her hands trembled as she took it. She nodded, then left the shop like she'd found something she thought was lost forever. That afternoon, sunlight poured through the shop's windows, like a gentle word. I stood behind the counter, hands steadily wrapping the last loaves. The oven's fire was low. The flour was nearly gone. But I wasn't in a rush. Every loaf now was a whisper. Daniel was out on the porch, wiping down the glass door. He didn't know I was watching, but I saw every small move every time he adjusted his sleeve, straightened the wooden sign that hung crooked. He acted like this was his home, not the house he'd left, but the one he was choosing to stay in. I quietly looked at the basket hanging under the left eave. It was still there, steady as ever, but this time it held no bread. Inside was a small paper, neatly folded by Daniel, taped to the basket's side. I stepped closer, read each word. "If you feel lost today, remember, there's a place that waited for you to come back." I held the paper, silent. My eyes blurred not from sadness, but from feeling my heart gently smoothed by someone's touch. Sophie walked up the girl who'd been with Daniel for weeks. She carried a hot tea, setting it gently on the wooden counter. "I think you should rest early, ma'am. We sold out today." I nodded. Didn't ask anything. Didn't need to know what was between them. Just knew Daniel's eyes on Sophie weren't nervous anymore, and Sophie's eyes on me weren't a stranger's. Mia darted around the counter, hugging me from behind, whispering, "Grammy, today I wrote on the notes. Call your mom, okay?" One lady read it, smiled, and cried. I turned, stroked her hair, lips pressed in a smile. I didn't preach, just lifted the cloth, draped it lightly over the basket. My hands didn't shake. Sunlight slanted across the front yard. The wicker basket swayed faintly not from strong wind, but because something in my heart had just been set down. I didn't know if the shop would be busy tomorrow. Didn't know how long Daniel would stay. Didn't know if Sophie would stick around. If Mia would keep running in circles. But I knew, today, I stood here, with the people I love, surrounded by bread's smell, afternoon sun, and a wicker basket that's been with me nearly my whole life. If you've heard this far, thank you. I'm not special, just a mom, like any other, maybe a bit stubborn, a bit old-fashioned, but never done loving my kid. Every morning, I'm up early, firing the oven, not because the shop's packed, but because I know some kids grow up on the smell of warm bread. And if you're out there, feeling unsteady, I hope you remember there's always a wicker basket in someone's heart, waiting for you to come home.